Oh, creaky chair. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on yet another present day production live stream. Our guest is smashing up the studio as we speak. If you've never seen us before and you have no idea who we are, my name is James and I am the resident tech wizard.
Ooh, and my name's Mark and I'm a fat, grumpy mastering engineer. And with us we have the lovely Paul Ashmore from Audio Animals.
Hello.
Yay, hello, thanks for coming.
I'm not so fat and grumpy.
No, exactly. Not grumpy or fat.
Wow, an actual normal human mastering engineer. They do exist.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
How are you doing, Paul? You good?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me.
That's all right.
Thank you for
coming.
joining us.
That huge journey you had to travel to.
Oh, yeah, not far at all.
To get here.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Paul runs a YouTube channel called Audio Animals and also has a phenomenal Dolby Atmos studio just down the road from us, and we met at GearFest last year, which I can't believe already how long it's been. It's been nearly a year, but yeah, we met at GearFest last year.
We had one too many drinks that night.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, because you were there with Nick as your business partner, and Nick's your cousin as well.
Yeah.
And we just felt like we'd known you for years.
Yeah.
It was, it
was good fun.
You just sort of click with someone. That was cool.
We was out till about 6-7 in the morning.
Really?
With the guys from KMR. It was
Wow.
It was a messy night.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Well, we blame them for paying for the bar.
Well, that's what it was. Well, they was like, yeah, we're carrying on the bar tab down here. Like,
okay,
let's
Fine,
go.
count me in. Count me in. So yeah, thank you for joining us. It's nearly been a year, but we've finally managed to secure a date for doing the live stream. And we've got Paul on the stream tonight to talk about Atmos, studios, speakers, whatever it might be. So just because I don't know, and I'm sure a lot of people don't know, what's your kind of history in music? Where did you come from with production? Like, where did you start? How long you been doing it? That kind of thing. This
is a question I answer so many times. So yeah, it's quite rehearsed answer, I guess. I mean, I started when I was like probably 15. Started production. Quickly realised I wasn't very good at production. It's not my thing. Then just started mixing for people over a long period of time. Working with studios, never working for having my own mixing and mastering company. Working with other people, didn't technically like how they were running things. Wanted to run it the way I wanted to run things. And they were very much always attended sessions.
Sure.
And I wanted to take the business online. I could see that was where the industry was going. I mean, this was probably, I think we were about 12 years in now. So yeah, that was where me and Nick kind of said, let's start our own company. Let's be a predominantly mixing and mastering company online. We were one of the first. There weren't too many beforehand, and then yeah, it just took off. And then next thing you know, we're now 12 years in, and we haven't had a day's rest since.
That's relatable, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, for sure. And that's good to hear as well, because a lot of the sort of old school studios are so stuck in the past.
Oh yeah. That's why. That's one of the reasons I brought it to these studios and said, like, look, we should be doing like an online mastering. We should be offering things to the world rather than just the people who are local or just the people who want to travel. And they were just like, no. So, whatever, I'm gonna go do it myself then.
Quite right.
And and I don't. They're not open anymore.
Right.
Which says I did the right thing.
Yeah,
so,
sure, exactly.
Yeah, that's.
And a lot of the big boys have followed suit. And with studios like Abbey Road doing online mastering.
Yeah. You've got to do it. Otherwise, you're just pigeonholing yourself into like London and Greater London, or people who want to travel.
Yeah.
Whereas we're working with people in Australia, Korea, Japan, America, all over the world. And you just couldn't reach that audience or be able to work with that audience without an online service.
Yeah. So you've got your online service, but also you've got your YouTube channel, and as we were discussing earlier, a fairly sizable Facebook audience as well. Mm-hmm. I would assume that helps you quite a lot with getting work in.
Yeah.
That's like your main marketing, I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, social media is massive. So I find with social media, if you're a cool person, you're honest. You're not too kind of selly. You're not trying to sell constantly everything you do. Like the videos that I do, I try to just be obviously the overall aim is to get clients, to win clients but when answering the questions, I don't necessarily say, oh yeah, come like I'm a mixer mastering, come and work with me throughout all the videos. It's like you come to that, you come to that kind of realization your own. So it's not, I don't like that whole trying to sell, because I don't think that reaches an audience. I think they reach the conclusion whether they want to work for you or not based on what they're watching and whether they can relate to you and whether you're, I find if you're honest, it's the best way to be.
Absolutely.
Even with the gear reviews, it's like some companies don't like the fact that I do some gear reviews because if it's rubbish, I'll say it's rubbish.
Same with us, yeah.
Exactly the same with us.
Kickbacks from a few
but it should just push them on to create better products. And even if there's stuff that I don't like, I'll always find positives in it. There's always positives in even stuff that I don't like. And when you're talking about high-end gear, there's not a lot to not like. There's always positives in good equipment.
Well, at that kind of level, it's almost entirely personal taste as well, because you're pretty much guaranteed with most high-end gear, it's going to be good. There's not going to be anything bad at that tier. So it's just like, do I like the sound of this? Does this work for me in my workflow?
Yeah.
And talking of workflow, so you've got quite a collection of kit in your studio. So you've got 2 studios at the moment, right?
3. Well,
3?
I say there's 2 main studios, and then we built a 3rd studio because we had too much gear in the main studios that we kind of we didn't want to sell. It's like I've got the West Audio Tube EQ coming next week, and that's going to replace my SPL PQ. I love the PQ. There's nothing wrong with the PQ. I don't want to sell it. So it's like, well, now the 3rd studio gets a PQ.
Amazing.
And it's basically an overflow. So that basically the 3rd studio now just has all of the equipment that we don't necessarily want to sell because it's brilliant gear, but it then just goes to live in there. So it's kind of that mastering chain's going to be a bit of a mix match of different gear that's was once loved, is still loved, but is too good to sell. Yeah.
Amazing. Could I get you just to hop forward about a foot or so, just so you're perfectly in focus on that camera?
There we go.
So your workflow, I know you've got obviously a hell of a lot of analog stuff. Are you still doing like a lot of hybrid stuff? So you're using the DAW a lot, and lots of
hybrid. Even mastering's hybrid.
Right.
I always say with mastering is if you're just doing analog, and you're not incorporating anything in the digital world, you're limiting yourself in the analog world. If you're just using plugins and not using analog, you're limiting yourself in the digital world. So it's like the best way to achieve the best sound is using the best of both worlds, which is digital and analog. And the thing with a digital plugin is there's advancements in the digital world. You've got things like Ozone 11. It's not great in the sense of the EQ's all right. It's just a standard digital EQ. The compression's all right. It's nothing special. It doesn't rival anything in the analog world. But with the incorporation of like AI being able to separate vocals from a full mix, like we get sent a stereo mix, and you don't have stems. In Ideal World, we have the vocals, we have the instrumentals, we have the drums, all in individual stems, but that's not always the case. So having that advancement in Ozone 11, where you can literally, if you've got a boxy vocal, you can use an EQ on that vocal within that one stem of the pre-master. So things like that, and like things like Soothe and all these different plugins that they're not. There's nothing like it in the analog world.
Yeah,
having like that's where hybrid works best, and you can use both.
A lot of stuff you can't do in analog world, and the Ozone Master rebalancing has saved lots of people's lives.
Yeah, and there's no analog processor like that. So if you're just if you need that processor, you need to do that.
If you just want the drums up, exactly.
Yeah, so it's like you have no way of doing that in the analog world. What, you're going to use mid-side EQ and try and isolate it, whereas you can just go digital world, whoop,
up it goes. Yeah.
So yeah, I find it's a case of using them both, never a case of using one or the other. And that's something I stand by. That.
So I'd be really interested to know, in terms of using hardware for Dolby Atmos, which is obviously a massive thing for you, the Atmos system, you use a lot of hardware. How does that kind of integrate into the mixing process. So my guess would be you would do kind of tone shaping and stuff using the hardware, print it back in, and then pan it digitally within the DAW. Is that right, or are you doing it in a different way?
No, all the Dolby Atmos is all digital. It's all plugins.
Right.
Not incorporate any analog. The analog goes in at the mastering stage for stereo.
Right.
The mix bus will have mastering on. The Dolby Atmos. I've had multiple conversations with multiple companies about creating what is a mix bus for Dolby Atmos, where we can have what you need. And if any companies are listening to this, they need to understand what we actually need from Dolby Atmos. Is we need a host, an analog host, which basically, let's say for instance we've got a Rupert Neve MBT, right? So we have a Rupert Neve MBT. It looks like a Rupert Neve MBT. We're able to control each of the parameters on the MBT. We're able to add silk red, silk blue, whatever like that. But then what that does is you have 128 channels that are across each of those objects, or what would it be, 100, 108, 118 channels, excluding the bed. So you have every object runs into this processor. Now, what you'd have is you'd have one set of controls that adds the same processing across each of those objects. So when you turn the clarity up, for instance, on the silk red, what that will do is it will brighten every single object. So it's even though because you don't have a mixed bus, you don't have that physical bus. You have each object. So it's basically like having, let's say, 80 Rupert Neve MBTs on each of the objects, but one set of controls, if that makes sense. Yeah. That's what needs to happen. The problem every company I've spoken to about this is cost. Yeah, it would be astronomical.
Yeah, with the amount of channels needed, it adds up very quick. Yeah,
even 48 channels. If you were just to use 48 channels, and what's that, 24 objects. It's still going to be, a Rupert Neve MBT is what, 3,800, and you're going to need 24 of those.
That's a lot of money.
With one thing that it's basically like you've got one that's a master kind of a host as such, and then every other one slaves off of it. So you don't really need the actual physical control of all 24 or 48 objects, processors. Just have the one, but it then changes all the inner workings, and there's just like, this just costs too much. It's like, but it's what we need, so find a cost-effective way of doing it, please. Because I want it.
We were talking about Colin earlier and DSP.
They'll do something like that.
I think they're getting there with the APB 16.
That's something. That's something they'll get towards.
The APP 128 is the one.
Basically,
next.
It's doable. It's possible, but no one's doing it, and the technology's there to do it. But, until they do something like that, and it's a case of as well is if the price for it's going to be 60 grand, who's going to buy it? There's only a kind of, there's a small market for that.
For sure.
Until those sorts of developments come into Atmos, I find it's far easier to just work in the box. That's why I got the Avid S4, because you got the kind of, the only limitation of that in comparison to analog, in comparison is that you're getting that analog sound. And this is why I was talking to you earlier about the McDSP.
Yes.
Wanting to add the McDSP in and waiting for them to build a channel strip so that we can put, basically turn the S4 into an analog console with analog summing inside the McDSP system. So I'm just kind of waiting on that. But until that all comes through, basically, the only analog processing that I add in is over the stereo bus, and in Atmos, I find it so much easier to just use plugins. Plugins are brilliant. There's nothing wrong with plugins. They're there's so much tech there.
For sure. So there are a lot of different mixing techniques that we've kind of discovered with Atmos, like certain reverb behaviors. I'd be really interested to know when you're applying reverb to mixes, specifically in Atmos, what's your kind of general approach? Because we've found that if you use like a reverb bus, quite often, if you use like a 714 reverb, it just goes everywhere and it sounds muddy and horrible and doesn't really work. So we've got our way of working, which is to basically use like a mono reverb and put it wherever the object is, and you get a nice kind of sound that way. Does that work for you, or have you got a different way of working?
I've got a couple of different ways. I mean, I have a 7.114 bus that then that basically fills the bed, and I'll use that for things like strings, something that actually needs to be in the whole of the room. Then what I generally do is when it's similar to what you're talking about with sending a mono out. I have an inserted reverb that I use on the actual object.
Yes.
So then what you've got is that object, wherever it is in the room, has the reverb that I want from the position that it's actually in. So even if I move it around the room, the reverb's still moving with it. So that's an approach I've found works really well, and having the both of them on there, so you can still add reverb to the sound, and you can still add reverb afterwards, you know, to kind of fill the room. Upmixing as well is I use Halo Upmix a lot to kind of instead of sending stuff like outputting it to certain areas of the room. Upmix is more in the way of it's kind of it's different in that aspect, because it takes certain elements and puts them in certain areas of the room. It works in a really interesting way. It can work really good on some sounds, it can be really bad, and deciphering whether it's good or bad is the kind of the hard part, or
that's
the bit that you've got to know.
That's where the art is, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But
so there's a question here. So just quickly, I'm just going to get you to move slightly closer again, because there's a downside I've found with these Lewitt Ray mics, and that's if you've got someone that likes talking with their hands.
Oh, right.
It's doing weird things with the volume.
So you put your hand in front of it. It thinks you've...
Yes.
Okay. It thinks you've doubled in size. So that should fix that. Lovely. So we've just had a question come through from Collective, who says, for mixing in Atmos, what would you wish the production to be? For example, drums, stereo, mono, one room mic, or a lot of room mics, individual channel things, or is this kind of a project dependent thing?
It's project dependent, but look, the thing with Atmos is the more you give us, the more we can do. You know, if you give us the drums in stereo, well, there's not a great deal we can do. We can put the drums in stereo, and then we can maybe upmix them, add some reverb, and put it around the room a bit, or point. I'll try and stop using my hands.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Start pointing audio around the room. But if you give us the kick, the snare, each of the recorded, like each of the mics, then we can position and make a mix sound like it is, like you're standing in front of that drum kit. That's the beauty of mixing in Atmos, is it's like you can position yourself in a room and make it sound like you are in that room, and what you're actually listening to is what's real and true to life. It's brilliant.
Real. Yeah, well, we've just
done
a production where we've just had a live drum kit, and we've just panned the overheads up slightly, so you can hear the difference in height between the snare and the ride.
Yeah, exactly.
We find what works really well with kind of what I would call natural genres, so orchestral, classical, jazz, that kind of thing, is to keep it very much realistic. So you have the band LCR, and then just kind of effects and ambience everywhere else.
I had a job a couple of weeks ago, and the guy who I was talking to, I'd done the mix. He was like, "Oh, can we try and get the lead guitar and kind of oscillate it around the room?" I was like, "Yeah, we can do that. It's fine to do that. We can do it, but in a realistic situation, is your guitarist running round the stage, doing circles around the stage?" And it was like, "No." It's like, so
why not? Why aren't they?
So it ended up that we went. We didn't end up doing that, but it's, I think as well, is on day one of getting an Atmos system, for instance.
Yes.
You go, oh wow, let's pan stuff here, and move things
it's fun
around.
To experiment,
and like you got. I remember day one was like doing a mix, and experimenting with what worked and what didn't work.
Yep.
You know, like a riser, I had it coming from the back of the room, and then it come to the front of the room, and then it automated to open it up on the sides and stuff like that. And it sounded interesting and cool, but after, you know, a couple of years of doing it, you're not doing things like that because it's just unnecessary. It sounds weird, and then
you get motion sickness.
The translation into binaural, it's like it doesn't necessarily always work. And yeah, over a period of time, you just understand what works, what doesn't work, and sound moving around a room's cool. It does sound good, but it's a case of keeping things natural to how they should sound in real life. And unless something is moving around the room in real life, like if you're doing a film and stuff, and there's, you know, an aeroplane flying over, brilliant, move it around the room. Yeah, it makes
total sense.
You know, if it's to look like it is on the visuals, but generally music, you're relatively static. Think of it as more of a case of positioning objects so that they have their own space in the room.
Sure. And I have actually found a lot of music, so obviously we've listened to tons of stuff here. I've found what you've said echoed in pretty much everything, apart from maybe K-pop. There's lots of stuff moving around in K-pop, lots of like vocals spinning around all over the place. Yeah. But in general, I do find it is that you kind of find a place for something. If you want to pan it maybe a bit, you know, do it, but don't go too crazy, because it can be a bit annoying, I find, if you've got stuff spinning around too much.
If there's loads of stuff going on, it's disorientating. It's like you do, like you say, you get a little bit of motion sickness, and it's not always necessary. Like if it's a pad or something, it's fun to move it around slightly, or, you know, move it up and down the room, or move it across the room. But yeah, oscillating things round and round and round in service, you're listening to it like
make it stop.
It's like
so talking about kind of moving things around the room, let's talk about your speaker system, your monitoring, because you've got a fairly phenomenal monitoring system. Just tell us what it is. Tell us a bit. In both rooms.
So in my room, I've got a PMC system. I've got CI series. It's brilliant. Got it hooked up with a Trinov.
Very nice.
And the calibration on it's brilliant. It sounds incredible. I turn the Trinov off and it's like, it's all right. But when it's on, it's like, because you got doing all the bass management with the to the subs, making the ceiling speakers full range with a sub, and it's a phenomenal system. So I've got 7 speakers across the front wall, with 2 subs on the front wall. Often people look at that and they think they're like seven speakers.
Yes,
2 of them are subs. So it's not like
I must admit, the first time I saw it, I was like, "Is this 914?"
Exactly. Yeah. So the 2 left and right of the center speaker, they're both subs,
right?
And you can see that because there's no driver and no tweeter in those. They're just the woofers on those.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to try and get a picture up of your studio on the website so people can see it as well.
So then the rear speakers are CI65s. I kind of want to put the 140s in the rears and the sides of the room as well, because the 65s are smaller, but you do notice that you're not getting the same output as the front speakers,
right?
So that's one thing I wouldn't mind changing at some point, even though when they're bass managed, you're utilizing the subs, but you can notice, and the Trinov does sort that out and it corrects that, and you do get that seamless movement around the room. But it's like if you guys were to have, say, your large mums as your left and right, and then your center speakers were the smaller ones. You'd notice that you notice a difference between moving to different speakers. And then on the ceiling we've got the smaller CI30s, and in that room's it's one of those rooms. I haven't heard you guys' room yet. We need to play something in there after this.
We ran out of evening really quickly.
I need to hear what that sounds like. But I've been into multiple Atmos rooms, and I've always kind of I've never found one that sounds. Obviously, I'm quite biased in the sense that I work in my room all the time, so that's my kind of standard. And then any Atmos room that going, I generally hear bits of phase. I hear some, I can move an object around the room, and it's like I can hear phase as it goes from there to there, and especially rooms that aren't fitted with a Trinnov, that you really do notice a big difference.
Well, that's something that we commented on, I think maybe on our last live stream, when we were chatting with Warren, which is when you've got the Trinnov, you can have a really good solid sound system, but when you've got the Trinnov enabled, you get that rock solid kind of sound imaging, especially like we've found as you pan from like the left or the right to the surround. In that kind of empty space between, if you don't have wides, you can make it sound like you've got a wide speaker with the Trinnov, because it's just such a rock solid sound.
Well, you've got so many phantom centers, haven't you? Yeah. And so the two things that really bugged us when we were going all around the studios in London listening to Atmos systems was firstly the studios that have got 60 grand's worth of speakers in the front room and then something out a car door as the rest of it. And they're going, tonally they match. It's like, well, why haven't you got the small ones in the front as well then? Yeah. That was one thing, and then you pan a kick drum and it just sounds like a fart in a glass. And the second thing was just hearing sounds skipping from speaker to speaker. And then you're not thinking object based, you're not thinking immersively, you're just thinking channels. You're thinking, I'll put it in that speaker or that one.
Also, as well, is if you're processing a sound, you're almost going, right, I've got to put it up the front speakers, process the sound, get the sound right, and then move it to the back. And you don't end up wanting to process sound on the back speakers because they're inferior to what you've got up the front.
So in terms of kind of panning for Atmos, are you, as Mark said, like quite adventurous? You'll go like between speakers, you'll go kind of halfway up the wall, so you'll make the most of the possible kind of positions.
Positioning wise in Atmos, it's I find you've still got to utilize the front, like majority of the front. I mean, there's no point putting like a cymbal on the back of the wall, because it doesn't come from there.
It's just weird.
And I hear it all the time. And the one thing I do, I kind of get sent a lot is other people send me ADMs of their mixes that they've done in like binaural, listening on headphones, and they'll pan things crazy positions.
Oh yes.
And it's only when you actually play it in an Atmos system, you go, what the bloody hell's that doing over there? And it's like, right, pan that back over the floor. What's the bass doing at the back of the room? But it sounds great in binaural. Well, because it's not.
There are one or two things I've heard that are a little kind of odd, which might be like an acoustic guitar in the surrounds. Kind of works sometimes, can depend a lot on the song. I must admit, I think I agree quite heavily with you in that it's mostly for effects and ambience and stuff like that.
It's about serving the song, isn't it? I mean,
exactly, it's highly song dependent.
Yeah, some stuff you can go mental.
Maybe like electronic music and stuff, you might want to be a bit more kind of creative.
But when we were doing we recorded a jazz piano trio at School Farm Studios about an hour away, and the intention with that was Atmos, and it's very much LCR with the room behind you, so you feel like you're watching the band. But if you do pan the bass over there and the drums over there and the piano at the front, or the piano behind you and the bass over there and the drums at the side, it does still work.
It does.
Then it sounds like you're in the middle of three musicians, and if you want to hear a bit more bass, you can sort of sidle over to which I actually really enjoy. I enjoy sort of walking around the room. And there's a lot of talking about in the back and
talking about walking around the room. That's one thing when I designed our room and how we were going to put the room in was I put the S4 on a stand, like a desk that goes up and down. And the reason for that is when working in Atmos, I find it so much more enjoyable to stand and walk around the room and explore the room more, rather than being like, if you're working in stereo and you've got stereo speakers, you sit there, I've got all my analog gear around me, and it's like, I sit and work like that. But when it comes to Atmos, a click of a button, desk comes up, stand up and mix, and I get more into it. I end up dancing a lot of the time.
Nice.
And,
but I think that's really good, because it means that you're really kind of interested in what you're doing, and you're getting the most out of your system.
But I'll like I was saying with like the upmixing stuff into multiple speakers, I'll actually go and take a listen at the back of the room. What's going over in the back of the room? Okay. You can kind of whereas if you're sitting down on a seat and you're not necessarily doing that sort of thing. So I find that's a really nice way of working.
I really enjoyed it. We've got a sofa in the corner of the room, which is slightly behind the very rear speaker. And I just love sitting there and just pressing play.
Yeah.
And which is a really odd listening position behind the outermost speaker. But it's just, and you get a good sense of, like you say, what's going on.
I find as well with when you've got the Trinnov so highly tuned to the sweet spot, you can move outside of that very small sweet spot that's probably like, a basketball kind of size.
So the size of the mic,
if you're sitting in that sweet spot, everything sounds perfect. But when you do move out of it, you do notice that you're not inside that sweet spot anymore. That's one of the other good things about the Trinnov is being able to put multiple presets. So when I put the desk up, I've got a totally different measurement because I'm standing. So obviously my listening position sweet spot's standing up. Whereas when I'm sitting down, it's obviously down here. And then the desk being up, moving in front of the drivers, makes a difference to the room as well. So having that ability with the Trinnov.
So obviously you got your multiple listening positions when you're kind of at the desk. Do you use headphones much? Are you kind of checking mixes on headphones?
I always reference with headphones. Headphones are good to reference with. I've also got on the Trinnov a binaural render coming back to the speakers, so I reference over the speakers as well.
Cool.
Because I'm a firm believer. What the thing is if you know what you're doing and you know how to use how to set the binaural information, i.e. the off, mid, near, far, and you're monitoring it at all times, you can get brilliant playback of binaural in stereo, out of stereo speakers. And a lot of people say that you can't, and you can.
Oh, you totally can.
A lot of people just don't know what they're doing. And if you've got everything set to far and you play it out of a pair of speakers, it sounds crazy. It sounds terrible.
Yeah, it sounds like you're in a stadium.
And then you got people who are like, I see it all the time, like the top engineers as well. It's like, oh yeah, I've got my my kick drum sitting. The objects, for instance, is set basically left and right speaker, and then they've got the object set to mid. Well, why? Why is that not off? Because what binaural processing are you applied? I didn't think of that. It's like, you're a top engineer. Why are you not thinking of this?
Yeah, you should know that.
Yeah, you should know this. Oh, that's why it changes sound. It's like, and that's why you can only get a decent playback in headphones. You can't get it decent playback in speakers. And like, you 100% can get incredible playback of binaural audio in speakers. It's just a case of knowing what you're doing.
Getting the render right.
You get the rendering right. The renderer set up right, and it's the playback's brilliant, especially on like things like pads. It's like it's on a different level. We put a pad to mid or something, or a set of strings to mid, and you position them in the right position in the room, and then you can get those pads sound incredible. Unlike anything that you can achieve working in stereo.
In regular stereo, you get added to the depth and dimension.
There's a separation between all sounds that you can achieve, and it's like you don't have to have every single object set to near, mid, and far. Some can be off.
Exactly.
Some don't work. I find with vocals don't work. You put a vocal in mid, and it's like if you put a vocal in mid or far or even near, you get a wispy sound over the top of them.
So in terms of, as we're on the topic of binaural, how do you find that the height channels translate to headphones? Are you getting that to work, or are you...
kind of,
because like when listening, I find it really easy, like just from a listening perspective, not from a mixing perspective. I find it really easy to hear what's going on at the ground level, but it's not always so obvious what would have been panned upwards. Yeah,
it's not as obvious. I don't find it's as obvious, but it's... Yeah, I wouldn't say it's obvious at all, but it has its effect in the sense that I feel like you can still gain that little bit extra separation between the sounds when played back over headphones, even if you can't hear that it's above you. You still get that separation between the two sounds if it's set up panned off the floor.
So let's talk about hardware for a minute, because obviously the audience didn't catch our super cool conversation before we started. What kit are you using in terms of like an interface? And just like run us through your kind of general Atmos setup. So we've covered the speakers. What's the rest of the chain?
So yeah, interfacing. I use a Avid MTRX Studio. The main reason I use that is because of the integration into the Avid S4 console.
Right.
It's so good with the monitor control. It works flawlessly with that. It's a brilliant interface. Converters on it are brilliant. The only conversion that's used for is the conversion to the monitors. The Trinov is over Dante, so there's no conversion in the Trinov. That's covered over Dante. And then I've got a couple of Burl converters which are set up to the mastering chain.
Very nice.
But in terms of Atmos, the other pieces of hardware that I use in Atmos are, I guess, things like the Stream Deck's good.
Yeah,
They're so handy to have.
So what kind of thing do you use that for in Atmos?
In Atmos, launching the renderer, the shortcuts in the renderer, things like that.
Yeah.
All these, it just makes my life easier. It makes my life, like, even just typing, like, the amount of times I type an email, I get to the end of the email and I type my name.
Yeah.
You know, just got shortcut.
Yeah, I've done exactly the same
name.
thing for like our address.
Yeah. Things like that. It's at the end, when I print a mix, it's like Audio Animals Mix 1. So it's like I've got a preset for Audio Animals Mix, and then I've just got to press the 1. It's just all the things that I have to do time and time again that are just repetitive, are just kept real simple. And it's such a, well, it's not cheap. I was going to say it was cheap, but it's not that cheap. You know, I think you're talking about 160 quid for one, which is, you know,
I mean, compared to some of the other investments that you have to make.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a loop deck or whatever now, which just launches apps and stuff, and
they're brilliant.
Yeah. You'll see I've got a Stream Deck on my desk, and I use that for everything from like DaVinci Resolve editing to loading my favorite websites when I'm working, like emails and whatever.
Exactly.
It's a very good bit of kit. So talking about exporting mixes, so if someone wants to hear work that you've done, where should they go? Where can we hear what Audio Animals ends up
on the
as?
website? We literally list everything on the website. Like, so the problem with where to hear the work we've done, we often don't get to hear the work we've done.
Right.
You know, once you give a track back to someone, it's not like they come back to you in 2 months' time and go, "Oh,
here's the thing.
Here it is."
Yeah.
It's like we have to stumble upon these things.
Yeah.
So a lot of the artists, you know, I follow the artists and I see that when their tracks go up, so then I put them onto our website. Any that I see go up. So we've got like a previous work page on our website, which is actually quite dominated by film work, which is brilliant. But yeah, basically we put everything on the website.
You've done a lot of big film work as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
give us some examples of that.
Yeah, I mean we do a lot of the trailers for like Aquaman, Avengers.
No way.
Yeah, we've done loads of like, the thing with it is kind of like once we done one, we did Spider-Man first of all. There's an interesting story with the Spider-Man one that I always tell people, because I find it's quite inspiring, because we basically got contacted by a client of ours, and he was like, I've got the opportunity to do the mixing, like the production in Spider-Man. We want to do the mixing of it. It's like, oh, brilliant, yeah. It was like, I haven't got that much budget. I was like, okay, yeah, right,
The
okay.
usual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm thinking, you know, if you're really working on Spider-Man, you've got budget.
You should have a budget.
Oh, come on, you've got budget. Like, don't give me that. And there was a conversation between me and Nick where it was like, do we do it for free? And if it is what it is, brilliant. And if it isn't, you know, we've lost some time, which is money.
Yeah, sure.
And we ended up doing it, and it all came through, and we did the mix and mastering in Spider-Man, and it was brilliant. It came out, and 2 weeks afterwards, we got a job on doing X-Men. I think it was X-Men Days of Future Past.
Wow!
And that was directly off of the back of that, because I know that because you don't just get a job like mixing work or mastering work in a film unless you've done one before. So getting your foot in the door, getting that first job is really, really difficult. And the one thing I always say to people, like if I ever have these sorts of conversations and tell this story, is sometimes it's beneficial to do something for free, because you know there could be a big artist and you sit there thinking, well, you're a big artist, you've got budgets, you know, you've got the money to pay for this. But if I do it for free, I win the work, and what do I gain from it? And I saw it as I gained a lot more from doing it for free than even if I'd have got paid for it and made a nice bit of money out of it, and then not got any work after it, then it's not as good as if I'd done it for free and got loads of work after it.
Exactly. You lost a bit of time.
I mean, it's
yeah.
So it was that the film work. I love doing the film work, mainly because it goes to ridiculous audiences. Like I always laughed at the fact that like a producer goes to Spotify to listen to music. I go to Netflix to listen.
For sure.
Like, I listen to the trailers, and it's like, you know.
That's good.
So out of interest, you say like you're listening to Netflix and that kind of stuff. As far as I'm aware, I'm not sure whether this is the case with the Avid MTRX stuff, but with most setups, you can't really stream Netflix or anything like that without an AV decoder.
Yeah.
Are you able to do that on the Avid stuff? Do you need like an extra box?
Yeah, you need an extra box. I generally, I've got a system at home that I listen to all that sort of stuff on.
Right.
So I don't tend to actually. I don't think I've never watched a film or played back a film in my Atmos studios.
Right.
I've played back obviously the films that we're working on in the Atmos studio, but I've never just played one to sit and watch a film in our Atmos, and it would be amazing to watch it in there. It'd be like going to an IMAX cinema. But I've got an half decent Atmos system at home in my front room.
Very nice.
And my wife was quite reluctant.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but I just come home one day.
So what have you got in your
it's nothing special. It's just one of these sound bars. I think it's but I come home with an 8K TV.
Very
this
nice.
Sound bar with speakers that are around the room, and then upwards firing ones that all calibrate. And I kind of walked in with this box with this massive TV, and my wife just was like, what have you done? That? We've got a perfectly good TV. Yeah, but this one's 8K. And then she's like, well, what streams in 8K? Nothing.
Brilliant.
It's like, well, why are you getting an 8? Because
we can. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That's
I worked
really cool.
hard for this TV. Just
absolutely.
Give me it.
So, out of interest, so Mark and I don't really get much time, despite having our own Atmos system next door. We don't really get any time to listen to it.
Yeah.
The only time we really listen to it is when we're demoing it to customers. What about you? Like, do you get much downtime in the studio to just sit and like enjoy Atmos, or are you just super busy all the time and you don't really get the chance to just enjoy what's there?
Yeah, no, there's not much in the way of being able to just sit and not do anything.
Sure.
But then I'm not that way inclined. I don't actually want to sit and do nothing.
No.
Even like if I was driving in the car or something, I'm always thinking up something. There's always something I'm thinking business related. So yeah, to have downtime, I wouldn't even like it.
Yeah, drive you a bit crazy.
I'm not that way inclined. I'm kind of like an all or nothing 100%. Like that's why, you know, if I've got massive amounts of work on, I can't do as much YouTube content.
Right.
It's just because I don't have enough time in the day, and I try to get home at a reasonable time so I can see my kids before bed and things like that. So yeah, if I have got time to myself, and I'm not working, I'm with the family kind of thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily sit there and I would never sit and watch a film in the studio, for instance. I watch a lot of films, but I watch them whilst I'm on my laptop doing mundane tasks, admin tasks. So I'll often like I've currently just started the Lost for the TV series for the probably 20th time, and the reason I watch those sorts of things is because I know the story. I've watched it a million times. I know exactly what's going on. I don't have to look at it, but I can sit there working away whilst it's on, and I can visually see it. And I don't really get a lot of downtime. I don't wish I did actually.
It's nice to be busy.
Yeah. I mean, I went on holiday over Easter, and from the moment I got there, I missed the studio. I want to be at the studio. I want to be with my family. I want to be, I want to be having fun, doing all these different things. But, if it was my day off, if it was a bank holiday, I work where I'd be if I had a day off, kind of thing.
Sure.
Which is, I mean, it's a great situation to be in. But I love work.
Yeah, well, that's what we find as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not really work, is it?
No, it's not.
It's like having two social lives.
Yeah,
almost. You've got the home one and then the work one, which isn't work.
Yeah, it isn't work. It brings home the bacon, but it's not work. It's like I go to work to have fun. It's what I'd want to do if I worked a normal 9-to-5 job. As soon as I got home from that job, I'd be doing what I do now. In my spare time. Yeah. So it's just I get more time to do what I do in my spare time. By calling it a job.
But people say that you're really fortunate to be in that position, but you've got there through damn hard work. Hard work not being work. But
sure.
I mean, you've
there's a lot of sacrifices.
You've put the hours in to get where you are.
Yeah. Like even just having our kids, for instance, we delayed that because, I always delayed having kids because I wanted to build a business first and be in a position where, because once you start a business, if you've got kids if I was to start a business from the ground up, it'd be very, very difficult if I had the situation where I've got a wife, kids, and I've got other dependents. Whereas before, when starting the business, I had 0 people dependent on me. So starting a business, I could live on £10 a day. I didn't have to make money, so every bit of money that I made could be reinvested into the company. Whereas now there's mortgages, there's all the sorts of bills, there's childcare fees, there's all sorts.
Shoes,
clothes,
exactly.
Stuff. It's like the little one, she wanted skates this weekend, and it's like, all right, cool, let's go get some skates. Fell over about 20 times, which is funny.
That's all part of the fun.
Yeah.
So what's the future look like for Audio Animals? So you're working on your 3rd studio at the moment with all the extra kit. Have you got anything else planned? What's the future?
The plans going forward. So we're now currently in the process of building a production side to the business.
Cool.
We've got a real good team that we've always worked with doing producing. And then we've always engineered it, but we're building more production aspects into the business as well. We're doing a lot of setting up some merchandise at the moment because that's just money for old rope, really. You can do it all via Etsy these days. It's all drop shipped. So it's just you've got a brand and someone else takes care of it. It's just you just create the products. Things like that. In terms of the kind of the way I want to progress forward, I want to employ more people. I want to give more employment to people, build more studios, and I would one day want to take more of a backseat on the mixing and mastering, and then more focus on the actual running of a company. But that's not happening anytime soon. Because I generally do enjoy what I do. So I don't know if at the moment it's kind of everything, doing so much. In the sense that when I get loads and loads of work on, I've then the kind of running of the company and all the different things like the marketing and everything like that. That almost has to sort of take a back seat sometimes because I've got so much work to do. It would be a case of expanding the kind of building that we've got, putting more studios in. I want to do a lot more in the way of courses and tuition for people, because there's a lot of bad information out there that people are following. And I get emails all the time of people saying, "Oh yeah, this and that," and it's like such bad information. Like, we shouldn't do that. That's not what we should be doing. And they're like, oh, but I heard it from this guy and this guy, and he's like a top Grammy engineer. I was like, well, it's technically not right. And like, there's a lot of information that out there that people are following that they're told by really good engineers because they're paid to say these sorts of things. It's like, come on, be a bit more smart.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, when someone's telling you that this plugin is the best thing in the world and
it'll fix everything.
Yeah, it's like, question it. Is it the best thing in the world? Use it for yourself. And it's, you know, I won't say what plugins I'm talking about, but there's a lot of big engineers that endorse lots of rubbish stuff. And it's because they're given it, paid to say what they're saying.
There was one that was advertised really heavily quite recently.
Oh, I think I know. Yeah, I think I know.
Yeah, and every top engineer was all over it, and it was absolute shit. Like proper shit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And most of the reviews on YouTube, fortunately, the unpaid ones said that. They were like, this is crap.
Yeah.
And then you'd got the sponsored ones, which are like, oh, this will transform your mixes.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's changed my life. Really?
Has
it?
Did it?
Yeah. Well
Are
done.
you still using it? No.
No, delete.
So expanding the business, at the moment there's two of you. So you got you and Nick. What's the kind of roles within the business? Like, who's doing, are you both doing Atmos stuff? Is one doing more mastering or?
So yeah, we're both doing Atmos. Nick's more mastering. Nick doesn't do any mixing. I take care of all the mixing. We've got this with me and Nick. We've got this kind of yin and yang sort of relationship where we're cousins. We've grown up all our lives together, so we have a very, very good understanding of, like, it's like a relationship. It's similar to the relationship that I got with my missus, in the sense that she knows her roles in the house, I know my roles in the house, and the two don't mix. You know, and it's the same with business with Nick. He knows what he's got to do, I know what I've got to do. He's good at certain things. He's not great going on camera, like, you know, things like this. He just wouldn't enjoy it. It'd be you know, it'd be weighing over him for weeks to come. You know, whereas I love doing these sorts of things. So it's like he's very good at certain aspects of the business. I'm very good at other aspects, and we've over a period of time worked out where our strengths lie. And I don't encroach on where his strengths are. He doesn't encroach on where my strengths are. We very much have like this 50-50 kind of, where we're 50-50 business partners. We very much have a 50-50. This is your work, this is my work. And yeah, it works. It's good.
It's kind of the same with us, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, with us, it's pretty much, this is my building.
Yeah.
And Mark is in the workshop building speakers.
Now,
but
these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've definitely got the same kind of dynamic.
It's playing to your strengths, isn't it?
Exactly.
There's no point in
there's no point in me screwing a cabinet together, because
no, exactly. I could show you how to build a speaker, but there would be absolutely no point, because
it would come out looking like a cat or something.
It would be a huge waste of time. And the same with you, with me. You know, if I sit down and edit a video, what takes you an hour will take me a week.
Exactly.
It'll be crap at the end of it. So
that's why it's good having a team. I think it would be quite boring working on your own. Like, it's just nice to have to bounce ideas off people as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So just reading some of the comments. So Mark Krauth said, so this is talking about the AV receivers and how to play stuff back. He's got a Tone Winner AT300. Baker said he's got an Arvis HD 1D. So there's lots of names that I've heard back when we were kind of researching the best way to get music out of a computer, which should be an easy task, but
speakers with a volume knob and a headphone socket.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of kind of the same names popping up. Just talking about the business side of things again, like what does it cost to get, if I was to send you a single, what would it cost to get it mixed like in Atmos? Is it more than, I would assume more than like regular stereo mixing?
Yeah, but it's not a lot more. The thing with it is I've worked a way that I can do both, so I can still achieve a stereo mix that then has the capabilities of playing back in Atmos. And that's important, because if you mix something in Atmos, there's no good it sounding rubbish when played back in binaural.
Sure.
So being able to create an Atmos mix and then being able to play it back in binaural perfectly and it to sound great in both formats, that I find is the key when working in Atmos. So when it comes to mixing, in terms of a service, I can kind of comprise them both together. So even if I'm mixing in Atmos, I can still print the stereo mix from the mix down mix to the stereo.
Sure.
And that plays back brilliant. So in terms of cost, it all comes down to the stem count, because if you've got 100 stems, it's obviously a lot more than if you've got 10 stems, because it takes 10 times longer. So I've always implemented with this business that I always want to have a base rate that's very fair and very, very accessible to everyone. So I charge for an Atmos mix. If it's 10 stems, I set the base rate at £150, which seems very, very cheap. But then you can add all sorts of things on top of it. So if you want a stereo master as well on top of that, it goes up to £200. So it's £50 for the stereo master. So you can add all stuff on. So I always like to create something that there's a kind of a service there that is affordable. But then, like, I've got clients that pay £1,600 a mix. And they send 100 stems, and they have the Atmos, they have the mastered stems, they have all the alternate mixes, they have they order a 1 working day turnaround, which is an extra £200. So they add it, they crank it up. But I find it's important for me to have something that not everyone can afford, but it's affordable. Sure. Rather than going, right, every mix is £1,000. Yeah. And then that just goes, well, you can't, you know, people, there's 99% of the music community would not spend £1,000 on mixing and mastering. No. They just wouldn't. No. So there's something there for everyone. I find that's really important. So you can you could get a mix and a master done in Atmos for £150, or you could get it done for £1,000. It all depends on, you kind of can work it out so it's down to your budget. And whether, you know, you can kind of squash the stem count down. So if you're sending 2 to 10 stems, it's £150. If you're sending 50 to 100 stems, it's £500. If you're sending stems, it's half the price of if you're sending raw multi-tracks, because there's twice as much work involved. So always make sure that there's a way that you can have a very affordable version. And then if you want to do 100 stems multi-track, it's £1,000. Yep. Whereas if that was the only option, I'd lose 99% of the market.
Right. So obviously most of this covers regular kind of music mixing, like per song, I would assume. You said that you do a lot of the film stuff as well. Is that kind of just trailers, or are you doing like a full 2-hour movie or
full movies? The price on them sorts of things, you have to, you know, it's quite bespoke. Sure. You know, you can't, as well as I get an independent film come to me, and it's like, you know, you price that differently. Sure. To the likes of Sony. For sure. Because, you know, it's totally different. You know, there's budgets. There's, you know,
I'd be interested actually from a tech point of view. When it comes to like mixing a full, let's say 2-hour film or something, is the whole thing in one project, or do you kind of split it up and then put it together afterwards? Or
these days, the computers are so powerful, you can get it all in one project. It pushes it to the limit. Right. You know, if you've got 300 stems or something, sure. 300 audio tracks, mixing all those in Atmos, and there's parts moving around, you do push the session to the limit.
What computer do you use out of interest?
I've got a Mac Studio. Yeah, that's one of the more, it's an Ultra.
The chunky one.
28 gigabyte of RAM. Yeah, just basically maxed it up to what was possible with it.
And that's running Pro Tools, was it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Pro Tools on that.
Which I suppose is where you get the really good integration with the Avid MTRX stuff. It's all the same.
I mean,
company.
that's the thing with all the Avid stuff. It's like using Pro Tools, using the interface, using the DAW controller, which might add is ridiculously expensive.
Of course,
I just God, the mind boggles. I'm not the best of advocates for the S4. It's brilliant. It's incredible. But it's ridiculously priced.
Very expensive. Yeah.
It's a DAW controller at the end. It's a control service.
Yeah, it's a really big mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have you always been on Pro Tools, or is this as you've moved into Atmos, you've started to do that?
No, Pro Tools. Pro Tools is just the DAW I've used.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. I mean, I dabbled with Cubase years and years ago, back when it was like SX3, which is probably, I don't know, a good 15 or so, 18 years ago. And I always just found with Pro Tools, you pay a premium. I mean, they're ripping people off left, right, and centre.
For sure.
They really are.
Yeah.
It's like I pay like £300 a month for all my studios in just subscriptions.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Which is a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big chunk.
Yeah, considering someone using Fruity Loops pays like £79 and they're getting unlimited upgrades.
Yeah.
Same with Logic, it's like 179. That's it done, and then you get all the updates until the newer version comes out, and it's like, oh yeah.
I suppose with Pro Tools there are some benefits, like you can use the external renderer and stuff like that. With Logic, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But you've got Studio One is another alternative that we're kind of looking into for our stuff.
That's great for Atmos.
Your mic is on.
It is on.
There we go. You're just looking the wrong way.
I'll leave the room and cough again. I've got a really tickly throat on this live stream, so that's why I keep disappearing.
I find one thing with Atmos, with Pro Tools is, generally speaking, anywhere you go, any studio you go in, if you're very fluent with Atmos and you know all the shortcut with Pro Tools, you know all the shortcuts. You just kind of. You can walk into any studio and the majority of them are using Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the reasons why I've stuck with it so long. I've had that same thought about Studio One.
Sure. Yeah, I know lots of people saying good things about it, and you can also, which I believe you can do in Pro Tools as well, but you can run the binaural mix at the same time as the speaker mix, just by adding 2 extra channels to the renderer, that kind of thing. We tried using Pro Tools in here, but because we've always been Logic or Studio One based, it was such a massive change in workflow. I spent a good 6 or so hours just trying to work my way around it, and gave up in the end.
I was the same with Logic.
But, really?
Yeah, I moving from Pro Tools to Logic, using Logic for. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to do some production, and I wanted to try and produce in Logic.
Sure.
And then go to Pro Tools to mix. And I found it was like muscle memory that you've got for Pro Tools. And when you're so fluent with Pro Tools, and it's like the shortcuts are different, everything, it all just felt weird. And it was too much of a learning curve. And I always say, I get asked this question a lot, what's the best DAW? And it's like, it's the one you know.
Of course, I agree.
Yeah, there's no one better than the other. One's more expensive than the other.
Yeah,
but even with the cost and the expense of Pro Tools, it's like it's very expensive and it's subscription based and But from a business perspective, it's just whatever. It's
so. In terms of workflow, obviously you got the Avid S4 control surface. Do you find yourself still going back to keyboard and mouse, or are you able to do pretty much everything just on the desk?
Yeah, there's certain things that you're quick at with a keyboard and mouse, and there's certain things that are so much quicker with the control surface. I mean, however expensive that control surface is, it saves me 10 times the amount of time, so it's worth its weight in gold for me, because what it comes down to from a business perspective is money is time, and anything that can save me time makes me money, kind of thing. So it paid for itself within a couple of months. So it's a really important tool for me. In terms of, I still touch the mouse and keyboard, but not in the way that I normally would. Like I've got the Magic Mouse, for instance. You use the Magic Mouse, scroll left and right and up and down. So that does your scrolling left and right and up and down. And then you've got the jog wheel that does your zoom in and out. And the rate that I can speed around a session to find things, zoom in on things, is super quick in comparison to holding Alt and scrolling in and things like that. And then, like, you know, with the control surface, you got every single plugin is mapped perfectly to the control surface. So I can literally bring up a plugin and just literally, I'm working on it like I feel like I'm on analog when I'm working on it.
And does that count for third-party stuff as well? Are you able to map it to...
everything. Yeah.
And then you find you're listening and not looking. And then everything goes up.
Yeah.
A notch. That's hugely important.
So did you have any kind of like history on analog desks? Did that kind of workflow move over to the Avid S4?
I moved from an SSL X-Rack system,
right,
using a Nucleus 32 or 48 channel summing with SSL, and then I think I had about probably about 16 channels of channel strips.
Very nice. Because there was a comment that just came in asking, do you still have that Nucleus?
No, I don't think so. I lose track of if I've got something. I'll have to have a look at it. I don't think I've got it.
It's in the overflow studio.
Yeah, the Nucleus, I believe, that did go. Just because the thing with the Nucleus is, I love the Nucleus. It was a brilliant controller, but the problem with it is the UF8s came out.
Yes,
and there's no reason to get a Nucleus. The Nucleus was a pain to set up.
Was it a
Once
Nucleus?
you had it set up,
Once
you had it set up with that network, it was cool, but don't touch it.
Yeah.
If you touch it.
Well, we had a Nucleus 1. I don't know which you
I
had.
had Nucleus 1.
It was great when it was working, but the problem was, and the reason we got rid of it, in order to get it to work, you have to do some weird dance in which, like,
IP MIDI and stuff.
You have to turn the computer off, but make sure Wi-Fi's off, and then if you turn it on and Wi-Fi's on, you have to restart the computer and plug this in and plug that in, and then turn around, do a star jump, and all that stuff.
And like I said, time is money.
Exactly. We were wasting loads of time, so we just got rid of it.
And you get halfway through a session and your Nucleus is trying to check your email just because it's plugged in. You're like, what's going on? I just want to turn something down. And then you go back to the mouse.
Yeah, that didn't last long.
That was that third-party bit of software, the MIDI over IP thing. That was where they went wrong.
Well, and the audio driver didn't work either.
Oh, no, that was apparently a cheap OEM.
Yeah.
Interface that they didn't make, and then when the developer stopped support for it, and it wouldn't work on any further operating systems from
like Windows 8 onwards
or something. It was that whole functionality of it wouldn't work, but they've nailed it with the UF8.
The UF8's solid. They've done really, really well with that. Yeah, so that setup that you've got in there, that's really nice. That's good. The modular aspect of it.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah,
it's really
and now
good.
you can map the UC1 to any plugin you want as well.
Brilliant.
And that's again, you can just turn the screen off and listen to it. And
so, do you have an Avid control system in each room, or have you got something else in Nick's room? Or
in Nick's room in Studio A, we've got the Avid dock in there because it's majority mastering. He doesn't need. Who'd spend 40 grand on a DAW controller just for mastering? It's very much a mixing console.
Sure.
So a dock is more than adequate for that sort of thing. Even for Atmos, I'd say you don't. I mean, it's lovely to have if you've got all the money in the world, and 40 grand's not nothing to you. I mean, believe me, it is to me. That's a lot of money to spend on a DAW control. And I remember having a conversation with Jason at SX Pro, and I was just like, "But it's a DAW controller." Like, but it looks brilliant. Yeah, it looks brilliant.
Yeah, but it's 40 grand. That's 3 meals out in Epping. Crazy.
Yeah, it's a little much. So one final question.
I've got a couple of questions, but you
no, go ahead.
Right, beds or objects?
Oh, objects.
Yes.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm using the bed for the LFE, and that's
it. Bed. The bed I will use for LFE I'll have the upmix go to it, and I'll have the Atmos reverb go to it, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like I cannot understand why, even if you let's say you've got a kick drum that's sitting in the left and right speaker, and that's where it's intended to be. I cannot understand why you would put it to the bed instead of just having an object. Yeah. It's just an object. Yeah. Even if it's left and right, it's an object. That's where the object is. Yeah. So every single sound is an object. Everything that's spatial in the sense that an upmix or a spatial reverb that's LFE, that can go in the bed.
Do you find yourself hitting... I know in Logic there's a 128 object limit, which I assume there is in Pro Tools as well.
I can't say I've ever hit that limit.
I was going to say, do you hit it? But
part of the format.
I've hit it with film.
Right. Understandable.
Yeah, and that's just all you do there is you just have the same sound is on the same object. So once you've got past that section of Foley, for instance, goes on to the next bit of Foley that then automates to another position. Yeah. So you just got to work around it that way. But in music, God no, I can't say I've ever. Yeah, I've always got probably the max. I've probably still got 10 to spare quite easily. Yeah. I can't say I've ever reached 128 and gone, I need more.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's fairly rare for most people to have that many channels anyway.
With Jake and Collier, and then
or me and Jamie.
That's just the backing vocals.
Even so is even if you've got lots and lots of stems, they still sum down to a single object. Multiple sounds can go into a single object. If you've got a lead vocal you got 20 different takes, they all go to one object.
Yeah, exactly. So and then the big polarizing question is, and this is another one I don't understand as well, that a lot of people seem very divided on this, are you using the center
for vocals?
No, not for vocal. No? God no, I don't. I'm not a fan on vocals coming out the center. Bass, sub bass, subs, and I'll put into the center, but I'm not a fan of vocal in the center. I find it's all about a translation into how it sounds in binaural as well, and I don't think it sounds that great when it's panned dead center. Yeah, and I don't think it sounds that great in Atmos either.
Now I loved it on the speaker playback. I love it. Just putting the vocal in, just giving the vocal its own speaker sounded amazing. You get a super clear vocal. Everything else is out the way of it. But you're right, the translation to headphones particularly. Yeah. So now I'm kind of using a blend of the two. I'm kind of using a little bit of left and right and a little bit of center. To sort of bolster it up a bit on the speaker.
I think it's always just a case of you've got to monitor as well for playback in binaural, because 99% of people are playing back in binaural. Yeah. So why wouldn't you make it playback correctly on that medium? It's like countless amounts of times I get sent an ADM and it can play back brilliantly, and it sounds great in the Atmos space, or it sounds great in binaural, but never sounds great on both. So our job as doing the Atmos mastering is let's make sure it plays back correctly on both, and that's because we have the ability to listen to both, whereas the majority of people who are sending ADMs and mixing them on Logic, printing an ADM in Logic, playbacks in binaural, so they're not really getting that understanding of what it actually sounds like in Atmos. Like I could quite easily mix a track, for instance, in binaural, and knowing how things sound in Atmos, be able to position it and visualize exactly how it is. But that comes with a level of experience, and that's not something you would just be able to do if you didn't work in an Atmos studio for a very long period of time.
Sure. I think Andrew Shep said someone asked him, can you work just in headphones on Atmos? And he said, yes, absolutely. If you've spent 2,000 hours in a room, in a properly calibrated room with speakers.
100%.
You know how it...
Exactly. I'd know exactly where to position certain sounds in binaural over headphones. But that only comes with a lot of experience of how things sound in certain positions of a room.
For sure. So Gotya has said, I have this new religion of not using lots of tracks anymore. I make bigger, better sounds from the start and play more interesting things instead of lots of little bits of BS. It comes out better that way. And I think I agree with that totally.
Will these mics pick up clapping? Can we all just clap here?
Yes.
Yeah, get it right. If you want a massive guitar sound, get a massive guitar sound out of your guitar and your amp.
Oh, I wish everyone was like that.
Yeah,
sometimes I get sent like 100 stems. It's like
100 guitars.
Yeah, it's like this could have been so many less stems. I mean, I'm not complaining. They're paying like 3, 4 times, 5 times as much. But it's like, come on, you could have really have kind of scaled the stem count down here.
Yep.
And saved yourself a lot of money, saved me a lot of time, and you'll get a far better sound.
Yeah.
Like one good sound rather than 5 mediocre sounds layered together. Like get one good kick drum rather than having 5 kick drums layered on each other.
Yeah, and then you got to add a sample for the click bit, and then now I've got to add a sample for the low bit, and then you just end up with a phasey mess that sounds tiny. So
he's bang on correct. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely right.
There we go. So right, I think we should kind of wrap up with one final question. And I already know the answer. Simeon Matthews says, what does Paul think of the PDP monitors? Well, we actually ran out of evening before Paul was able to go in and hear them.
I haven't heard of it,
So we'll probably pop in there after this live stream and have a quick
we heard
listen.
them at GearFest.
I heard them at GearFest. One thing I will say on it is that what's really impressive is how they're being created, how the way they've kind of come about. Like when we saw you at GearFest, where you're at now is incredible. Like going into the where they're all made and stuff earlier today, it was eye opening, because it was like, whoa, yeah, this is serious. This isn't just 2 guys making monitors for the sake of it. This is proper manufacturing. There was like, probably 30 odd monitors up on the walls, ready to go out. It's like, it's impressive. But like, I think you've got a real good thing there with regards to the modular system. I think that's brilliant. They sound great. People are impressed with them. I keep hearing people and saying how good they are. And I'm going to get a chance to hear them in Atmos.
Yeah, we'll pop next door and give them a blast.
Let's go and do it. Sod you lot.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Go and
have fun.
Go and have a cup of tea. We're going to go and listen to the Birdie song in Atmos.
Absolutely. So Bench has said, amazing stream, been glued to it. Great interview. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And thank you to Paul for coming in, spending the evening with us.
My pleasure.
Really
we'll come to you
appreciate
and do a studio tour for our lovely audience.
Yes.
It'd be good.
We can go through all the kit.
Yeah, we are really looking forward to going to Paul and Nick's studio as soon as possible, which would be really cool. Do a studio tour. We'll go there now. We'll do a studio tour, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. And if you haven't already subscribed to Audio Animals YouTube channel, make sure you do that. Loads of really good, useful content on there. Anything else you want to plug while you're sitting here, feel free.
No, I'm not much of a plugger. I don't try and plug, but if you want to get your track
go
mixed,
for it.
If you want to get your track mixed, swing over, and be happy to work with anyone.
Lovely.
Cool.
So thank you everybody for watching the live stream. Hope you enjoyed it, and you will see us next week talking about a topic we haven't yet thought of.
Cheese graters.
Probably cheese graters.
MIDI cheese graters.
Oh, that's exciting. See you later, everybody. Have a good evening. Goodbye.
Thanks for watching. Bye.